government has lost its push to ram through tough powers to lock up detainees. The coalition has teamed up with the Greens to delay the changes. Joining me at the desk is Trudy McIntosh. Trudy, this is really a setback for the government. They wanted it done in time for the Easter break.
Yeah, they're claiming this is urgent, Kieran, but now it's going to have to wait unless they can somehow convince the coalition, the Greens and the crossbench to change their mind. We've seen in the past 30 minutes the Senate vote to kick off these new proposed powers to a lengthy Senate inquiry. The Greens wanted this to run all the way through to June. The coalition said no, make it May 7, just a week out from the May budget. Now, we will see over the course of the next few weeks these public hearings where departmental officials will have to front up and explain these new powers. We only learnt about this less than 48 hours ago. Strong penalties for detainees who are refusing to cooperate with their deportation. If they don't cooperate, they face a jail sentence of between 1 and 5 years. The bill would also give the minister a power to declare a country essentially not cooperating, and that would mean we wouldn't issue visas basically at all to citizens from that country, designed as a bit of a stick to try and make countries like Iran cooperate with deporting detainees who've been languishing in Australia for quite some time. This is how it played out in the Senate. A fiery debate, a rare alliance of the Greens and the coalitions agreeing the way the government's handled this has been a mess.
We're meant to be a government that's now run by adults. But this was like some sort of kiddies crayon drawing being brought into Parliament and then defended by embarrassed officials.
To say that the last 24 hours has been chaotic is an absolute understatement, and that is why the coalition is supporting the motion that has been moved by the Australian Greens.
The coalition is not ruling out eventually backing these new powers, but they just say that it's up to the government to explain why it's so urgent. We know the High Court on April 17 is hearing a second test case, ASF 17, as to whether another cohort of detainees will need to be freed. So on the government side, that's partly explaining the timing of this sudden legislation. But ultimately, the coalition says we want to see the detail before we eventually vote on this, and that's why we're seeing an inquiry. As for the government, though, it's hard to get them to answer questions. We saw Minister Clare ONeal refusing to speak to journalists as she was walking through the press gallery after appearing on Sunrise this morning. Have a look.
Do you expect legal challenges to come out of this legislation if it's passed?
I'm so sorry, I've got to go to a meeting.
This is major legislation. This is major legislation, and you're not taking questions on it.
What's your response?
What confidence do you have, or what advice do you have that these laws won't get thrown out by the High Court?
Minister, why his family are desperate, and what are your response to concerns about his welfare and treatment?
This is major legislation, and you're not taking questions.
All reasonable questions, left with silence there from the Home Affairs Minister. The reality politically, Kieran, is today is the last day of Parliament before the long pre-budget break. Unless the government somehow manages to recall Parliament, get enough support from the coalition, it seems like we're not going to see this pass until at least the May budget session.
Trudy, indeed. It looks like, unless they bring the Parliament back, as you say, but right now it doesn't look like that's going to happen. So the coalition playing hardball on this one. Trudy, thank you.